In this episode, we're going to be doing a complete inspection of the front suspension on our 5th Gen 4Runner.
Including changing out our front coilovers to ToyTec's new Aluma Series, putting fresh ball joints on our SPC upper control arms, and making sure that the bolts holding our lower control arms to the frame move freely so we can get a proper alignment. Before we did anything, I measured from the very center of our wheel straight up to the lip of our fender on both sides. Later, that'll tell us if the amount of lift has changed any. We're going to start by disconnecting the upper ball joint. We already have the whole knuckle assembly supported with a jack stand underneath it, and we have this piece of rope to keep the spindle from flopping out. We're going to disconnect the ABS line here just so there's not a lot of tension on it. Put the bolt back in the hole so we don't lose it. And then the upper control arm can just be swung all the way out of the way. Continue taking this castle nut off the ball joint. Come on. Now that that upper ball joint is loose, we can take this upper arm and try to wrestle around, see if there's any play in it. And that's still nice and tight. With the upper arm able to swing clear out of the way like this, now's a good time to get the coilovers out. If we didn't disconnect the ball joint here, we could always disconnect the tie rod end and take the coilover down out through the bottom like that. But this is a whole lot easier.
We have a complete 3-inch lift install video here, or click the link at the end of this video. We also put a link to it in the video description.
With 80,000 miles on our old Boss 2.5 coilovers, they were in need of a rebuild. But instead of doing that, we decided to upgrade to ToyTec's new Aluma Series.
These are some of the specs straight from our buddy Hugo at ToyTec Lifts. The shock bodies are made from hard anodized aluminum for cooler operation as well as protection from the elements. Good idea. Adjustable 2 to 3 inches of lift. The internal hydraulic valving is optimized to match the 700-pound rate spring for use with or without a heavier bumper or winch.
Huh.
Shock bodies are 2.5 inches in diameter, providing additional oil over standard OEM shocks.
Just like our old ones.
Nitrogen charged design with internal floating piston to help prevent shock fading and cavitation? What's that?
I have no idea what cavitation is. Do you?
Not a clue. Heavy duty 19mm induction hardened piston shaft.
Probably a good thing.
These shocks are fully rebuildable.
Just like these.
Aftermarket upper control arms are recommended.
Which we already have.
Sounds like these are going to work out great.
One more thing. Out of the box, these are set at 2.5 to 3 inches of lift. Adding more preload to the springs by screwing this collar down is not recommended.
Before we put the upper ball joint and the coilover back in, we're going to inspect the lower ball joint for excessive movement, particularly up and down. Well, that looked really good. It's amazing how long these originals last. Our tie rod ends are still nice and tight.
Now these SPC upper control arms are adjustable for camber and caster, and that's done here at the upper ball joint. And you see here, there's a little star washer where you can turn this, and that's going to twist it to give you more negative or positive caster. We're going to go with a little bit more caster in this. We're going to hopefully end up with 4 degrees or close to it after we get it aligned. So we're going to put it in like this. And you'll find this chart from SPC on their website that tells you how to position that washer just right to whatever alignment spec you're looking for. I'm going to put a little never seize on this taper joint where it goes into the spindle. That way it'll be a little bit easier to get it off next time. Upper ball joints and coilovers are in. Now we're going to go down and look at our lower control arm bolts to the frame. They're notorious for freezing up, especially up here in the cold weather where we use a lot of salt on our roads. Hopefully they're not froze up, but I'm afraid they are, and we really need those loose to get a proper alignment. We're going to try this rear one first. This is more likely to be free than the front one. And it's more than just having the bolt free. These cams on the side need to turn like this that's how you align it. So we'll get this bolt out and see, or loosened up anyways, and see if that'll turn. Now that we have the nut and the bolt loosened up, now we can put our wrench on the cam itself, and that turns good. See how this is coming in and out? That's what we want. So this is a good one. Then we'll put a wrench on the part where we have to adjust it, and hopefully it's going to move. But I'm not holding out hope that it will. No, you see where it's moving a little bit, but this should spin all the way around. Now, we can still get this thing aligned. There's plenty of room for adjustment in the rear of the lower control arm and plenty of adjustment up here at our ball joint. Eventually, we're going to have to address this situation. We're going to have to get the lower control arm off, hopefully get those freed up. If not, we're going to have to get a new lower control arm on both sides. As you can see, we've got the tires back on. We loosened up and retorqued everything to spec, and by looking at it, it's in fairly decent alignment. It's towed in a little bit, and this on the driver's side is kicked out at the top a little bit. We're going to try to push this in a little bit using a good old trusty level. So we'll loosen up that ball joint, upper ball joint, and try to slide it inwards a little bit until, if Mary looks at the level.
You got it. It's there.
Right there?
Tiny bit more, but it's there.
Good enough. We'll let the alignment tech take it the rest of the way. Okay, now we're going to check the toe with just a simple string to see if it's in line with the back tire. And that's not too bad. It's in a little bit, but we'll let the alignment tech take it the rest of the way. I want to really quick go over the 3 basic adjustments made during an alignment. First is toe in and out. That's where the tires go in and out like this. Think of either pigeon-toed or bow-legged. Reminds me of a joke about a bow-legged woman that I cannot tell you on camera. But that's toe in and out, and that's easily adjusted down here at the tie rod. Camber is how straight up and down your tire is, either in at the top or out at the top. Obviously, you want these pretty much straight up and down. And then there's caster, and it's a little bit harder to explain than the other two. It's the angle from the very center of your wheel to the upper ball joint. What this does is it affects how your tires lean in a corner. With 0 degrees straight up and down, with the center of your wheel right in a line with your ball joint straight up and down, your wheels would turn like this, straight up and down. Now what the caster does, bringing it back like this, is that makes your wheels kind of lean into the turn a little bit like this. Positive caster will also make your tires always want to return pointing straight, greatly increasing straight line stability. Now like I said earlier, the stock spec for the 4Runner is 3 degrees, but we're thinking with the larger, much heavier tires and the 3-inch lift, 4 degrees might just give us a better feel at highway speeds. So we're going to try that.
The alignment is done. We weren't able to get the full 4 degrees of caster, but just going from 3 to 3.6 really made a big difference.
Afterwards, we took it for a long drive on a variety of surfaces, and so far, we are really happy with these new Aluma Series coilovers. The old ones put up with a lot of abuse and gave us a good ride on and off road, but they were a little bit stiff at slower speeds, especially on like washboard gravel roads. These seem to be super smooth at any speed on virtually any surface. I must say, going from the 650-pound springs on our old ones to the 700-pound springs on these, I was a little bit concerned. I didn't know what to expect. But taking into account the extra weight we have on the front end, once again, the folks at ToyTec Lifts were spot on with their recommendation.
And now that the springs have had a few days to settle, we're going to measure again. For a full 3-inch lift, we should have 23 inches from the center of the hub to the fender, and it's just at 23 inches, perfect. After we have more time driving it, we'll post an update on the performance of our new coilovers in a pinned post in the comments and on our Facebook page.
We also have new Aluma Series shocks and heavier springs to install in the rear. Unfortunately, we ran out of time in this video. Stay tuned.
Before you leave, be sure to hit that subscribe button.
And follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Red light's on.
For excessive... Before we put the upper ball joint and the control, not the control arm, or click the link at the end.